This is like changing gears. We don't have any gears, so, but changing gears, I would like to introduce our next segment, which is all about performance and Tesla racing. So we have two people, hopefully you're well aware of both of them. So first of all, Andrew Lutz, a Florida resident, club member. So Andrew has the Tesla Plaid channel. You have done how many drag races now in your 1,500 drag races in his various Teslas, which he will tell you all about. And then over on this side, we have Blake Fuller, a full-on professional racing driver, holder of Pikes Peak record and all kinds of other things, whose car is right out the front here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew and Blake.
We are going to roll the video.
Lining up against the race.
This is the Pikes Peak Tesla right here.
All right, Blake, have a good pass, man.
I will, thank you.
His best quarter-mile run is 9:16 that he ran on 4 slicks.
Can we run together, or?
I'd love to make a pass with you. We've got lined up with the Hill Climb Plaid that's also gutted. He's a little more gutted than we are. He's got all the tricks going. The front teeth up for aerodynamics. And we just beat that time by 100th of a second.
I couldn't give you anything on that light. Sorry, I knew you were lighter and had more rubber than I did.
He's got it, see?
100th of a second ahead of you, man.
It's a stock car that you just decided to not have a 4-seater.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you just have a 2-seater, like a bunch of
Corvette or
other cars.
anything else, yeah.
Here, $5,000 to get everything back the way it was.
Come on, I'll tell you one time.
Okay.
One more time, yeah.
No,
You know you can't go that fast.
are you still in the staging lanes?
No, they threw me out. They said you were too fast.
Okay. Hey, I'm going to use some notes. I've got so much I want to cover, but I've only got about 10 minutes before I'm going to hand it over to Blake here. And Blake has got a lot more experience with a lot of road racing, hill climbs, and things of that nature. So just in the area of drag racing, you know, I'll offer that, like anything else in life, it's a risk-reward trade-off. You know, the reward is obviously you have a fun day at the drag strip, spend 20 or 30 bucks, and run for 4 hours. But the risk, yeah, sorry about that. So I was talking about risk reward. So the risk obviously is your car and, you know, potentially even your life. You know, people have lost their life in a at the drag strip. No one in a Tesla that I'm aware of, but you know, it's not going to be pretty. That accident that you saw there on the video, that happened right at the finish line. I was doing 115 when that truck hit me, a nitrous drag truck. And if I'd have been on the quarter mile, you know, at 150 miles an hour, that might not have gone that well. You know, it could have been a much uglier accident. So, you know, just recognize risk-reward trade-off. So there's a lot of rules out of the drag strip. There's separate rules for both the vehicle and the driver. And you'll notice that the rules are very inconsistently applied. And the reason for that is that there's all these different sanctioning bodies. I mean, you've probably all heard of the NHRA, but there's also IHRA, and then there's also Outlaw, and there's another one out west. But depending on, you know, which sanctioning body is going to determine what rules they apply, and then also they can have an insurance policy that is different on top of those rules. So, you know, if you kind of go out there and say, hey, I know the rules, you know, well, you don't know their rules, you don't know their insurance policy. And so you've kind of got to, work with whatever they give you in terms of, are they going to allow you to run? Are they going to require you to have a license? So I'll talk a little bit about that. So I race mostly at NHRA tracks. You've got Orlando and you've got Bradenton, which are both sanctioned by the NHRA. And then up in Gainesville, there's a track which is actually owned by the NHRA. It's the only one in Florida that they actually own, and they're much more strict. They did kick my buddy out when we were racing back in December because they told him to slow down, and he just kept going as fast as the car would run. But so be aware of that. As far as the vehicle goes, the NHRA specifically changed the rules in February of this year so that a car that's 2014 and newer can run up to 9 seconds, 9.0, or 150 miles an hour without having to add a roll cage or a parachute. So some of you might be aware that there are some plaids out there that have been modified, gutted out and whatnot, that can run in the 8s and well over 150 miles an hour, but they're significantly not legal. I mean, they've got all the airbags taken out, mirrors taken off, and various modifications to safety equipment.
Hey, Andrew, can I just ask a quick question on that?
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
for context for the audience.
Yeah.
From a drag racing perspective, so the plaid out of the box will run 150.
Yeah.
Put that in context, and just over 9 seconds. Put that in context for what that's over the last 20 years. What does that mean in terms of cars?
I mean, when I grew up, I come from a drag racing background. I had Camaros, I had a Fox Body Mustang, and a 12-second car was pretty fast. And if you had a 10-second car, that was like crazy fast. But there's been this horsepower inflation, is what I like to call it, over the last couple of years. You can get Hellcats now that have 800 horsepower and whatnot. But the thing about the Plaid is it's so consistent. Being all-wheel drive and being able to run 9 seconds. I mean, there's been no production car that ran 9 seconds. The Dodge Demon that many of you have heard about, if you're really lucky, you can run 9.99 in a Dodge Demon with the right tires and the right track on the right day and the right conditions. But every time I've ever raced a Demon, they're running 10.3 seconds and whatnot. They're over 800 horsepower. They're specifically built for one thing and one thing only, and that's drag racing. They're not built for road course racing or anything else. So 9 seconds is crazy fast. All right, in the interest of time, I'll just mention that if you go to the drag strip with your Plaid, they can absolutely require that you have an NHRA level 6 license. And it's not that hard to get one. It's a couple $100. You make 6 supervised passes, and you have to have the track manager sign off, and you have to have 2 existing licensees, like myself, sign it off and send it in with a couple $100 with your original time slips, and within a few months you'll get that license. Now, as many of you might know, you can go out to most drag strips on most days, and they won't require you to have that license. They won't ask you for it. But just to kind of be frank with you, if they're looking for a reason to kick you out because maybe you're not taking safety seriously or you just seem like a complete noob, it's one of those things where they can say, let's see your level 6 NHRA license, and if you don't have it, they can say, sorry, you can't run below 10 seconds. Or and then if you do, they'll kick you out, as they did kick my buddy out. Just a couple other things on safety. So I've talked a little bit about car safety and not modifying the vehicle. The personal safety equipment that you have to wear as a driver, helmets are enforced across the board in Florida for any Tesla. I mean, you can have a 13-second Tesla Model 3 non-performance, and they're still going to require you to have a helmet. And as you get faster, you need to wear a fire jacket, and I choose to wear fire pants as well. I wear fire-rated shoes, fire-rated gloves. I wear a neck collar by choice. I mean, you can see how many runs I've made there in the video, and you never know what's going to happen. So I take safety very seriously. I encourage any of you that is going out to the drag strip, for under $1,000, you can get a whole set of everything I just named there, safety equipment from head to toe, including the helmet, for about under $1,000. So no reason not to. It's definitely worth it. So other than myself, I think Blake is about the only other person I see that takes it as seriously as I do at the drag strip, wearing all the gear. Some guys that show up in shorts and a t-shirt, and they're like, well, why can't I run? I got my helmet. No, you're not going to run with just a helmet, and shorts, and a t-shirt on, and a Tesla Plaid. Just a couple last things. in the interest of time, there are different starting trees that they have. It helps to be familiar with it. If you're going to go out to the drag strip, spend a little time. There's different ways to get educated. I've got a few videos that talk about things like staging and good etiquette and whatnot. And that stuff's helpful because, in the Tesla community, if a lot of people are going out to the drag strip and, making rookie mistakes kind of a thing, it's easy, kind of have bad reputation, those Tesla drivers don't know what they're doing kind of a thing. And we certainly don't want that. So the more you can get educated on good etiquette, how the different trees work, where to stage and how to stage, what to do with the water box. I wish I had more time to get into those details, but it certainly helps, I think, to have all that stuff before you go out to the drag strip for the first time. Just one last thing I'll mention, the gray Tesla that I showed in the video, we made over 1,000 runs in that car. It's a 2019 Model S Performance. We made 1,001 passes in the drag strip, and pass number 1,000 was faster than all previous 999 passes. And so many people say, oh yeah, it's fast, but after 50 runs or 100 runs, it's going to slow down, the battery's going to weaken, etc. No, pass 1,000 was the fastest of all the runs we made. And that car is now my wife and I's daily driver car after all that. And here's the other amazing thing. Total maintenance costs for those 1,000 runs, $40. Key fob battery and a set of wiper blades. Okay, that's it. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Blake Fuller, a fellow auto enthusiast. Sorry, my fellow auto enthusiast. And he says so much. Yeah,
We'll make it up as we go along.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Blake,
Are
all
you
yours.
guys able to hear me okay? Got the mic on?
Switch microphones.
Oh, that's fine. Andrew, thank you. That was awesome. And Andrew is super humble because he has done more passes in a Tesla, I think, than anybody else in the world. Yeah. Well, how about this? I'm going to say you have until somebody proves us wrong. How about that? All right? Yeah. That was awesome. And actually, if you weren't so gracious, then maybe we wouldn't have so much time to talk about the other types of racing. And ultimately, what's exciting is that I've been around Tesla since the original Roadster, and sliding one of those around, it was an original demo car for the Fort Lauderdale dealership that they lent to me for a month, and I don't think they knew what I did with it, but thankfully it led me to where I am today, here talking to you about racing Teslas. And a couple other things that we have in common. Our former race cars are now our daily drivers. So like when we talk about my 2016 Pikes Peak record-holding car, that's now been transformed back into the 7-seater Model S P90DL that takes the kids to school every day. So it shows you kind of the transition from street car to race car to an opportunity for them to have a second life, so to speak, even before they become energy storage. The other thing that I thought was really great is that you have an amazing channel that I think is bringing a cross-pollination of traditional drag racers that are now getting their butt kicked by you, to be able to now be interested in Tesla from the performance standpoint, whereas before they might have poo-pooed a Tesla. And fun fact, my first Pikes Peak car is slower than the slowest Tesla that's made today. So it kind of gives you some progression. Of course, I've been doing it for about 20 years, but I guess we'll go over, if we could, are we able to queue up the other videos here? And while that's going, in advance, thank you to all of you who have supported the crazy ideas that I've had and going racing with Teslas, because one of the things that we'll transition into is that one of my race cars was the first ever community sponsored car. So you're used to seeing cars being sponsored by big companies. We were sponsored by big people. So thank you. So we'll have a little intro here that wasn't made by me, but kind of speaks to it. I guess I have the clicker, so I'm all in control. Go for it, actually. Thank you.
Blake Fuller.
It's the idea of my own
In
son.
2016, he raced his Tesla Model S up Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, America's premier race to the clouds. And Blake broke the world record for the fastest production electric car. It's now 2020, and Blake is itching to do it again. On June 28th, Blake wants to break his own record, this time in a Tesla Performance Model 3. Today we are launching the Electric Performance YouTube channel to share this story. the road to Pikes Peak. Want to join our racing team? We've got the driver. We've got the car. We've got the will to win. Join us in showing the world that the time is now for electric performance.
So, spoiler alert, that obviously is 2 years old. And if you haven't gone to Electric Performance Channel, check it out. We did an entire Road to Pikes Peak series of building a Model 3 performance that was community provided by a Tesla owner that was crazy enough to let me drive it up Pikes Peak and turn it into a race car. And afterwards, he got the car and then sold it to his good buddy who autocrosses it now. But thanks to everybody's efforts, that car then became the fastest Tesla and fastest EV production car ever to go up Pikes Peak. So that led to where we are today, and I don't know if it's blending together a little bit. It might be between the two slides, but hey, we can just roll with whatever's there. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, those other ones got blended up. Okay, so what do I do when I'm not in a race car, right? Because the rest of it's got to be pretty boring, but it's actually not. I get to design and invent batteries. So Pikes Peak led to me starting a company in 2001, which was called Braille Battery, and it's called that because you can't see weight and you can't see electricity, but we made products that were lighter, stronger, and faster, and they had performance you could feel. So, not that I'm pitching that company, because I sold that company in 2015, and it still is the supplier for IndyCar, for Formula One, and it's actually the most winning product in any type of vehicle. But what I wanted to talk about, and we just don't have the full time to do it, but it's that in pioneering lithium batteries for the first time in traditional auto racing, the same challenges that we both have to deal with, which are sanctioning bodies and organizations to adopt technology that they first deem as being dangerous, is a bit of a challenge. And actually, what I did with Braille Battery and the types of things that I had to go through led, like this is actually 15 years ago, we made our first equipment. It's like build the machine to build the machine. We made our own equipment to be able to actually make our 12-volt lithium-ion batteries that were the first ever in the world. So from doing that, we were able to progress all those batteries into all, like if you watch V8 Supercar, DTM, NASCAR, chances are one of those batteries that's built in Sarasota, Florida, totally American made, is actually in all those cars. And so having to pioneer the concept of a really, really expensive battery, our first lithium battery was $2,000 and replaced a $200 battery. But it could do everything electrically and more that the standard battery did, and it was about a fifth of the weight. So we had a lot of education we had to do, and I have to do that for racing now. So if we want, while I'm talking a little bit about the story, skip to the next slide. So after that, I've now been doing consulting for a lot of different OEMs where I do powertrain development and management and get to really nerd out. And like the last 6 months, I've created a database of, there's over 100 NDAs with companies throughout the world that are top tier suppliers for motors, transmissions, inverters, gearbox, anything that has to do with the electrification of a vehicle, to create an ecosystem that allows myself to go and help people to electrify and to performance vehicles. So these are some of the examples of items I've done. If you want to skip to the next one, Vito. So go ahead and hit play. This will be fun as we kind of talk through some stories. So this is, and I don't know if we're able to, yeah, I can compete with the audio because it doesn't have a loud V8. This is the onboard run from our Mount Washington record run. So what's really exciting is that as of right now, our team, which has been made up of volunteers, friends, family, and those who support us, our efforts have made us the winningest group with Tesla vehicles for professional racing of anybody in the world. We have records. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm excited. I just get to drive the car. And so this is Mount Washington, which is, you know, about 4,500 foot elevation climb and a little over 7 miles, which is, you know, about an 11% grade that you go up, which is less than Pikes Peak 8% grade. We can get very nerdy and all that stuff. This is a Plaid Model S for 2021, and it was, besides brake pads and brake fluid, bone stock, which I'm sponsored by Yokohama for my racing this year, but Michelin will be proud because they're a sponsor here. Their tires are on the vehicle that set this record. So we ended up beating not only the production record, but beating the fastest ever modified cars up there as well. So pretty exciting stuff. The other bit that I wanted to kind of talk through this as we're going, Mount Washington was a perfect example of how the background that I had in trying to pioneer batteries and new technology really helped me overcome traditional thinking. So we were accepted to the event, we show up for tech inspection, we're there, everything meets the letter of the rule book, and the first day of practice, they didn't let us practice. They weren't comfortable. They're like, we need to double check the rule book again. And so we actually did not get to practice until basically we only had like a half a day of practice before we did these record runs, because of the fact that they wanted to go through and spend 4 hours on the car to make sure everything was fully vetted. And those are the types of stories that happen even this year with Pikes Peak, is that this year at Pikes Peak we came back with the Plaid, a roll cage that had already been proven in the 21 Plaid. We did the same design, they made us change it again. So it's one of those give and take things where with organizers you have to sometimes work with them and educate them, and a lot of it is safety education, because a lot of people are afraid of electric vehicles. You know, we're very comfortable with them, they're not, and the same feeling you might get of watching me go up the mountain of anxiety is how they feel when they're actually looking at the vehicle that's going to be racing up the mountain, and they have that concern. So I do want to jump into, which while that's going there, how are we doing on time? Yes, 7 minutes, okay.
That's not 2x.
No, this is actually real speed. So, top speed was 140. One of the sections is coming up because it'll start to clear out. What is interesting, so let's talk a little bit about the differences between the 21 and 22 Plaid. In the 21, we didn't have track mode yet. So this is a very unique track because there's 4 different types of kind of road conditions. You have, you know, kind of patchy, kludgy asphalt and tarmac. Then you get into a section that is really graded away from the snowcats that go up there in the winter. Then we get into a dirt section. Then we get into like this freshly paved asphalt that is very, very narrow, but they actually paved over some of the rocks that are on the corners. So you have to be very careful to not. So our only damage that happened to the car, there were 2 things. One is I clipped the Michelin tire in the rear a little bit, and then we actually damaged a little bit of the back of the car backing on the trailer at the end. So I think we did pretty good. I'm not very good at backing up for some reason. You know, we're backup cameras. I go well forward. I don't know what the deal is. But our trap speeds in some of the segments, we were 3rd. There was Travis Pastrana that was doing 1. We're losing batteries. Speaking of batteries, the IndyCar was 121. I think we were 121 as well in that section. So it's pretty impressive what they can do. That or I just hit the button wrong. Sorry. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this was another amazing pulled off type vehicle where we got the vehicle delivered to us late because they wouldn't deliver to us because it didn't have a spoiler and because the dealership had scuffed the front. And after those were resolved, we had 1 week to build the car. And so within 1 week, we had the car from Florida up there and ready to go. And it was an amazing effort, which if you go to Clean Technica, they have a bunch of photos of it. You can check it out. I think we might have paused there. It's all good. So this is the dirt section. This is before track mode. So in the dirt section, it was a little frustrating because all the stability management, everything's still on, so you can't really move the car around the way that I would like to. But we did a fair amount of data analysis of what, we only had our 1 day of testing. So we looked at the difference between auto mode, the sport advanced mode and all those, and we were able to come up with some settings that actually worked really well for it. Let's see here. What I might do, we'll get past this one section, and then I might skip over to the other next bits we're going to talk about. So after this race, we had sold that car, and then we have the 2022 that's out there, which is the newest Plaid. And I will tell you that from what we've analyzed, there is more power in the 2022 cars. The peak power of that car is about 1100, and there's just, we spent a lot of time on the differences between the cars, and even the construction of the internal is different. So we've seen what Sandy ripped apart and looked at in the 2021. The 2022 have some changes to that, even from in how they did their castings and some of the way that they brought things together, where they put additional fixtures. And it's so interesting when you rip Teslas apart to the level of a race car. It's kind of like the half Monroe effect, right? So they go all the way, we kind of like stop halfway, then we do safety, but then we do a bit more in-depth analysis of what it actually does when it's on track and what it actually results in. And so that data is really, really interesting to look at the progression from the vehicles that Tesla has. So another example is the Model 3 Performance does have an onboard accelerometer, and that does somewhat limit the performance even when you reduce the vehicle weight. The Plaid does not. So there's a lot of these really great things that come out of that racing. And the other bit that I will jump to from the hill climb is that locally there is, actually it's beyond local. So Chin Track Days, which is a organization that runs weekend track events, they are really, really welcoming for EVs. So one of the things that is really exciting is that we have been now going out and setting records at Sebring and at Barbara Motorsports Park. We're going to be going to Road Atlanta. So our goal is kind of to do what Dodge did many years ago with the SRT program with the Viper, is to go out and show that this vehicle can actually beat the standard production cars that are out there. So even though that car has a bunch of fancy stuff going on, besides the brakes, which are carbon from Unplugged, and the pads from NRS, the majority of that vehicle is what you can get from the factory. So it really represents what everybody has. And actually what I'll do is, can you jump over to, and that's the end of that run, by the way. So that's how to climb 4,000 feet in 7 minutes, which I guess gives us a vertical ascent of it's like, I know a Cessna 172 will climb faster, but it's still pretty good for a car. So speaking of the database, and we didn't have the time to do this today, but I'm going to tease the heck out of you. I've actually done a pro forma roadmap of what the Plaid can do and what Tesla would do next, all the way down to the cell level. So in here, we break down the cell analysis of what cells they're using, the chemistry, looking at what their peak amperage is. Wait for the cell phones. We can talk about that later. But really talking about what they can do with a tri-motor, what they would need to change for a quad motor, and then looking at the potential effect. And so that's the other fun stuff I do outside the race car, as well as I do coaching. So on the right, the gentleman that I'm speaking to is a very generous gentleman who has lots of supercars, but he allowed me to drive his Taycan Turbo S, to data log it, compare it against a Model 3 Performance. So there's EVs that are getting out to track, and it's really exciting to see. So if you could cue up the next, and maybe even skip, unless, where's Henry at? Yep, can we skip this one, go to the next one? Because I think we're gonna run out of time. So here's the cool thing. I'll be outside, the car's outside. If you have questions, we can handle that. And I think what Andrew and I talked about is that if we hear enough of kind of the same questions and we are almost running out of breath, maybe we'll work together and put something up on YouTube that answers those common questions for everybody. But here's something that's fun that, I'll be quiet. So I think it's live, but you never know. We're a small crew, and sometimes we, I guess, take a little bit after, or Elon takes a little bit after us, and we set a goal really high, and then we just try to fulfill it. So, but the Tesla race experience is something that came out of trying to get butts in seats. And ultimately what we found is that if we give somebody a ride in the vehicle, which we have a couple people in the audience that have done that, and they got so hooked that they decided, I want to take my Tesla on the track and do the same thing. And I will say that the Teslas are amazing first-time vehicles for somebody to learn in. There's a lot less to worry about and a lot of things that you can turn on or off. And then they're also great progressive vehicles for those who maybe, as they like the hobby, they want to continue to do it in advance. So what we're looking to do with the Tesla race experience is to expose more and more people to just the raw acceleration and exhilaration of the Teslas, and also prove that they can do a lot more than go fast in a straight line and can have a lot of thrills. So I will say that next weekend at Daytona, We are going to be doing rides for 3 days at the actual speedway with the road course and the infield. And there is a limited number of spots, but you can go to TeslaRaceExperience.com and go ahead and sign up to go for rides. And if you are a speaker here, you're automatically invited to go and you get first in line status. So rock and roll. I'll hand it over to our Mike. Be good.
Thank you, guys. So Blake and Andrew are going to be around us with the rest of the speakers. I see you've got the car actually kitted with the seats outside. So that's the actual car that's going to be, it's ready to rock. So ladies and gentlemen, Andrew and Blake.